afternoon. All right. So, how many of you here have written a letter? Yeah? I have two. The interesting thing about letters is whether they're digital or physical, we're writing them all the time. We write them to acknowledge, to comfort, to encourage people in our lives we care about most. The other interesting thing about letters is they are thoughts that we are preserving in stasis on whatever medium that we're creating them in. So when we think about stuff, whether it's good or bad, what we're actually doing is sending letters to ourselves and people around us. So it's like we're these kind of walking post offices, which is really strange to think about, which is why I've titled the conversation I'm having with you today. It's a letter I want to write with every one of you of gratitude that I have about the life I've had. So how does a kid who started over here in this city, born in this province, on this peninsula, on the other side of the world, with no stable family, living with his neighbors, end up over here, playing drum circles in Venice Beach after a week of painting, or discussing artificial general intelligence and software sprints in a subway terminal in Times Square, or even doing a photo shoot in the Yuma Desert in Arizona with a musician friend of his, all while moving through these other industries of study? The answer's simple. I didn't do it alone. No one could have. So to kind of understand how I was able to get from there to here, it's, I think, important to kind of look at this matryoshka doll of a social system and vivisect that. So if we think of industries, right, those industries are made up of companies. Companies are made up of brands. Brands are made up of ideas. Those ideas are what attract people in their personal and professional lives. And it's something that I'm referring to as the vehicle in the rest of my discussion as families. Families are those people that bring ideas to life. So, to understand the whole system, from the individual all the way up to the macro, to an entire industry, one only has to understand the power of family. So I want to talk about 4 families that have had an incredible impact on me. None of them were biological. I've never had that. But I think the important thing about that is it taught me that family isn't biology, it's bigger than that. It's who you spend your time with and who spends their time with you. So I want to start this journey with you guys and begin to write this letter about how 4 families took me through the hierarchy of needs to be who I am today. So having safety is a really important thing, and I'm happy that was provided when I needed it most. Even though I don't look like it here, so boo-hoo, that's my frowny face. This is actually one of the most early photos I have of myself with my first human name. Luckily, the second family that I had, my adoptive family, was okay with this photo and with grumpiness, or else I would have been in a lot of trouble. This is my foster mother. I'll never know her well, but I'll always be thankful for the role that she provided in my life. So I just want to say, for anybody that's ever worked in the foster care system, that has been a foster parent to some child that didn't have a family, as a former foster child, I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Luckily for me, I was placed in a family shortly after this photo was taken, and with a signature from the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the insertion of that into a travel document, I was able to move to my next family. And it is nice to find a sense of belonging with a group of people. This is a drawing I did for my mother a few years ago for Mother's Day. And I remember asking her, because I didn't tell her I was going to draw it yet, but I asked her, Mom, do you remember the day that I came off the plane? It was at JFK Airport. And the thing about me is I'm really bad at remembering things that most people remember. So like I'm really bad at remembering what day it is, what week, even what month and year. In fact, I have problems remembering my name sometimes. And that actually came in the file when I came to this country. So it's actually documented, my bad memory. But my mom's really different than that, and I'm really thankful for that. In fact, my mom remembers with clarity details that revolve around relational data. So she just didn't remember the day, she remembered the moment. And I was able to finish this drawing and give it to her as a gift. So I just want to thank my mom and all parents that are there for their child, whether they're biological or not. So thank you, all parents. So here I am here, a little more happy than I was before. This is my photo, my naturalization certificate. And here I am with a bigger smile on my face, probably because of an exposure to art. I was exposed to this at this point in my life, and I think it's set up for a lot of stuff that I end up doing later. Up until this point, I was alone, but over the course of the next 10 years, I was joined by 3 other siblings from 3 completely different backgrounds. So this is my first sister here. She came with a snowman dress, I think. It'd be funny. I don't know. This is my other sister right off the plane. As you can see, they gave me a wild animals book to kind of distract me, but there she is. And last but not least, this is my brother. My dad holding my brother, not the other way around. He wasn't adopted as a big kid. But as you can see in the photo here, we all look really, really happy. But don't let this family photo fool you. I'm sure as well as you guys are concerned, you have family photos where everyone's smiling and then everybody's fighting right after. So with us, we're definitely like that. There was a lot of making up, fighting, making up, But looking back and connecting the dots on that, I believe that making up and fighting and differences exercise a metaphorical muscle. Those differences promote understanding, and through that empathy. And through empathy, it promotes love, because love isn't something born out of convenience. Love is when we learn to understand people that are different than us, whether we want to or not. So at around this age, I think it's grade school, right? So when you're around this age, if you look different, think differently, act differently, you get picked on. So I did some of the picking on, but I got picked on a lot because I was definitely a target. It was hard for me to feel like I fit in anywhere. I didn't feel quite American because I looked different than a lot of the kids in my class, but I didn't feel quite Asian either because my family was multicultural. So the question is, whenever you don't feel like you fit in anywhere, what does a kid that age do? And I think it's what a lot of kids do. I think we start to try to find worlds where we can feel a sense of self-esteem and some identity. So I started to search for that in the third family I'm walking you guys through here. I read a lot of comics growing up. I was into a lot of video games, which was a whole new format of storytelling that was kind of becoming pervasive in the 90s. And I asked myself, if I had the ability to create my own worlds, what would they look like, So I did. And I did this mainly because if I had to admit it to myself, really, I felt inadequate around this age. This is around kind of middle school into high school. I also felt like, I felt like a loser because I didn't fit in anywhere, except for a couple of other weird kids that were the same as me, So it was a way of escape, much like this drawing portrays. It's like I felt like I was funneling kind of a gateway to a different dimension of things that would wave to me and smile. Thankfully, at this age, though, I had to create a family in 3 incredible pillars in high school, and it was my art teacher, my creative writing teacher, and my physics teacher. And between the 3, looking back on it now, what they helped me do was to help articulate image creation, the expression of that image in writing, right, and the dimensions of space-time with a story, but help ground that in an empirical process of creation. So what I do now is I create things, fantastical stories, but I connect it to something relatable. So these things were starting to bubble and happen at around this age, which led me to this interest in this one field of creative study in particular, and that was animation, which led me right into college. So here I am wearing my weird I don't know, it was like a pirate hat or something. He used to bleach my hair, listen to a lot of punk music. But there were two main groups of people that were an extension of my creative family at this point in my life, and it was skating, which I did here. That's me doing a varial finger flip there, and some of my friends, we used to skate outside the dorm. And my other animation friends. And a lot of times I hung out with my animation friends at day, and then my skater friends at night. So it was kind of like, it was a good kind of cycle to be involved with people that were accepting of me and my differences. And then kind of at the tip of the spear of that was this guy here. I'm giving him noogies. That's when I graduated college. And anybody knows if I give you a noogie, it means I'm your best friend. But this is my animation professor, and he was actually, I was in his first animation class right after working in the industry. He used to work out in Southern California, worked for all these studios. And I remember clear as day one of the first lessons he taught me in one of his first classes, and it was a lesson on animation. And he said, animation is not the art of the lines that you are drawing on the page. Animation is the art of what those lines do when you draw them around something that's undefinable. When those pages fall through time at 24 frames a second, something evolves out of that, like a spark and a soul. And it's the job of the animator to capture that and to use the drawing as a conduit to bring that to life. So I remember sitting in that class and just going, that's like a crazy lesson, man. Like, because up until that point, I was just thinking of like images on the page and what they meant. So I knew that'd be a creative lesson I would be applying into any other industry I worked in for the rest of my life. Which kind of leads me into fourth family, kind of going through this hierarchy of needs. So never forget your story. Always create from that place. It will ground you wherever you go. That was the advice I got from this guy here. He roomed with my teacher when he was in school. And this is the interesting thing about family. I think when you're ready, you are led from one family to another, like different halos. As long as you stay in relation to that family, they'll lead you when you're ready to go to the next one. So I remember him sharing this bit of advice, and then, he was my first mentor when I was out of college, and then I remember finding out later that, after he worked with my teacher a bit, he moved up to Northern California, worked for this little animation studio that no one had heard about, and then worked on this project. The first one he was a writer on. He worked with 4 other guys, and he wrote this story about this cowboy and this space ranger on an adventure to find family. So it's kind of interesting because when you take the title of the story away, you realize what the essence of what that story is. So what it taught me was, wow, there's something to this. This isn't just creative advice he's sharing with me. It's human, which led me on a journey to find that to this very day, where I attempt to connect with people and their stories instead of their names. Maybe that's why I don't remember names very well, because what I care more about is the story behind it. And to connect with ideas and passions and, philosophies instead of a career. And this is the biggest kind of flip-flop and change I had to have in my career, is I used to chase career first until I realized it's not about the career. It's about the idea that should lead you on a journey to define what that career is. Which leads me to the group of people right here. We work in a building right down the street, one of these directions. I'm bad with directions too. But it's got a big logo on it, blue spinning box, and the building isn't important. What's important are these group of people. We represent an international group of stories and letters starting on different continents, in different backgrounds, different beliefs, and just different focal points in areas of study, but we all harmonize and we all galvanize on one idea in particular. It brings us together. That's maybe why we're cheering here. It's that heartfelt stories, when infused into artifacts with meaning, have the ability to change children and through that families around the world. And it's something I get up every morning and I am so thankful and so in love with that I am doing. I'm just like, I can't believe I'm doing this. So as I've taken you on this journey through all 4 families in my life, it makes me think of this phrase, mind over matter. I'm sure you've heard of it a lot. But there's this added meaning, I think for me especially, in the story, and it's this idea of ideas, allowing us to move up from our basic needs into this ascendancy of some type of philosophy that we chase, something bigger than ourselves. And I believe when we begin to do that, we start to gain this understanding of who we are in the world. But I think beyond, this kind of thought process that we correlate ourselves with, the most important thing of all are the hearts of those that willingly share their stories and their own letters with me, with everybody else in this room, as we kind of go through the experience of our lives. That I believe through this, it's not just this letter I'm writing here in this discussion, or the letter that guy has there, or that any of you have in the room here. It's the fact that all of our letters have never been separate. They've always overlapped, right? So the sentences, the words, the letters within those words. That's kind of weird. It's like universes within universes, right? All of those are a product of every other letter, so that we are writing this one letter together from the past to the present tense, from basic needs to purpose, from one human to another. So I just want to thank you for being my family. It's just not the human family on these slides, everybody in this room, because without you being a part of my life, I couldn't have written this letter. I wouldn't be where I am today. I would still be on that other side of the world in an orphanage somewhere. So thank you very much.